and don'ts of our own, and I have many. Football, of course, is such an integral part of Thanksgiving traditions, and we recently spoke to legendary coach Lou Holtz about the dangerous conflation of sports and politics. The entertainment industry is always a hot topic at the dinner table, and even more so this year. So we're going to bring you highlights from our interview with Hollywood heavyweight Rob Reiner and ask him why Trump derangement syndrome is such a powerful force in Tinseltown. But first, we begin with a frightening realization that millions of families across the country face tonight. They talked politics over turkey. The total horror of that unfolded all across the land. And just last year, a poll from PBS NewsHour and Marist found that 58% of Americans dread talking politics, while 31% said they were eager to hash it out over the table. And even more alarming, an issue of Science magazine this past May revealed that Thanksgiving celebrations that year, were about 30 to 50 minutes shorter for Americans who crossed partisan lines for the holiday than those who traveled to areas that voted as they did. Well, joining me now is our own little Thanksgiving gathering. So excited. Shannon Bream, chief legal correspondent and host of the show airing right after this one, Fox News at Night, one of my faves. And, of course, Scott Bolden, Democratic strategist, an attorney, of course, and Sarah Carter, investigative journalist and Fox News contributor, and Ed Henry, chief national correspondent, all the way up in New York. Guys, it's great to have you all on tonight. And, Shannon, I want to start with you. You heard those two studies. Are we really this far apart politically? And how do you control your interactions, especially with family members who can push your buttons like nobody else?
I think you get everyone into the turkey coma. What is it? The tryptophan is the thing that gets everybody happy. You've got football. I mean, you've got pumpkin pies. I mean, there are so many other things to focus on other than the sad, horrible jabbing at each other. I mean, if you show up, first of all, in your pajamas to the table, that's a conversation starter. You can stay in your adult onesie as long as you can. And then I would rather debate the stuffing. Like, is it filling? Is it wet filling? Is it stuffing? I'd rather debate that than politics.
Scott, but it is kind of crazy, though. I mean, I remember the old saying, never talk politics or religion at the table. My mother used to say that a lot, and I think that there's really something to that. And especially, like, you go to Europe, and people say, you go to Europe, and they do it better. You go to Europe, and they're always kind of surprised. We say, well, what do you do? They don't even ask, what do you do? It's always about, oh, isn't this wine great? Or I have something else. Do you like this? But we do get all wound up.
Yeah, we're wound way too tight. And by the way, I still don't talk to my clients about religion or politics, whether there's alcohol involved or not. Wow. But I think everyone ought to start the Thanksgiving dinner table, pre-table setting with alcohol. Whatever you do that day, you drink. Drink and keep drinking and stuff. Should I say that on national TV?
Yeah, that's fine.
But moderately drinking, but also maybe just a little buzz, because everybody will be happy at the table.
Well, except for those mean partisan
unless you have
you got to keep those out. They go eat on the porch.
All right.
for them.
Sarah, but I think people feel when they're with family, especially, that they can kind of let their hair down and they can have these conversations
we feel
at the
safe,
table.
Right?
It's a safe space, but is it really?
Well, it's a safe space until everybody starts arguing, right? And that's when everything ends. So if you want the 30 to 50 minute short version of Thanksgiving, go ahead and bring up politics, right? And then you can scoot everyone out of the house. But if you don't, I think the important thing is, Laura, is like sitting down. What we try to do is talk about the things that we're grateful for, right? We try to just steer away, like what we're grateful for each other, the things we've done over the year, try to focus on those things that make us happy as a family. And especially when you have children, right? When you have kids sitting around the table and there's a lot of adults, you know, it's a time to just kind of behave yourself.
Right.
And when
they're listening.
Yeah, they're listening. And when somebody starts to get out of line, that's when you bring in the pumpkin pie or the sweet potato pie
or the alcohol
or the alcohol.
More champagne for everyone.
Kind of, you know, play a little joke about that and go on. I really think, though, you just brought up so many great points here. We're living in a time where people are so divisive, and we've seen what, you know, is happening in California with the wildfires, the devastation, the loss of life. I think it's a time to sit back and be grateful for what we have and who we are, and just talk about those things. Those are the things that are going to make
And by the way, these dinners are going to continue because we're going to be going into the Hanukkah season. We're going to be going Advent starting, then it's Christmas, then it's New Year. So there's going to be a whole series of opportunities to offend each other. Right. So that's why do it limited
it out.
Yeah, don't limit it to today. All right, Ed, everybody at this table and you. First of all, we wish you were here because we're all drinking. No, we're not. But Ed, we wish you were here because we love you. But we wish you were here. But Ed, Here's what I find is people come up to me or at the table from having like, well, I know you don't want to talk shop, but, and then they just go, I know you're sick of politics, but do you mind if I say this? And what are you going to say? No. But that happens to me all the time. And of course you say, God, no, I'm happy to talk GDP. I'm happy to talk. Yeah, that's just what I want to do on Thanksgiving. But do you ever get that?
I get it all the time. You're absolutely right. And you don't want to seem rude and say, stop talking to me about it. But I talk politics all day. Let's talk about something else. And frankly, that's what I want to add to the conversation. Why are we even forcing it? If people are so divided, let's talk about things that unite us. And you heard it from Sarah, Shannon, and Scott as well. Talk about family. Oddly, religion is almost less divisive now. Talk about your faith. Talk about football. How about football? Nobody's mentioned football yet.
Yeah, well,
depending on
depends on
your team.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But
all
Laura,
I can say is two words: Roll Tide. It's all.
TDS is real. Turkey derangement syndrome is real.
Okay. All right. Here are 5 ways to keep family political arguments off the table. Okay. Number 1, reminisce about Thanksgiving dinners past. Number 2, accept that mundane conversational questions are fine. Number 3, skip the tradition of going around the table at all and saying what you're grateful for. This sounds counterintuitive, but expressing gratitude invites political statements like, I'm glad Democrats won the midterms. I'm glad that California flipped 5 seats.
That's right. That's always that aunt, right?
I am, but I won't say that. I am, but I won't say that.
But Scott, this is for you. Number 5, limit alcohol before and during the meal, Scott. So
alcohol is a depressant. The mean drunks will go to sleep.
No, but Ed, isn't that right? Because some people, when they drink, they lose their inhibitions. So they might have been a little bit more
another
restrained.
thing about Donald Trump, and another thing, and by the way, crooked Hillary. Keep the alcohol away.
And when you really think about it, like when we all take our last breaths, and we all hope that's not anytime soon. But when we do, we're not going to be remembering anything about any of the political stuff that has happened. Really, we're not. We're going to remember when we saw our child for the first time, that hug from your mother when you were hurting, when you helped someone or someone helped you, or mistakes that you learned from. That's the kind of stuff you remember, right? I mean,
you remember when you look in your child's face and you remember the first time they took their first walk, or the first time they came home and said, "Mommy, I love you," for after school, or the things that you did together as a family to get through the hard times, we've forgotten about service to others, right? Just taking a moment to do something for somebody else and not for ourselves, and maybe that's a good thing that'll get families together tonight. Do something for somebody else, for a stranger, and make yourselves feel good about it. It's a good feeling to get away from yourself.
But if it does delve into politics, I'd like to drive the conversation to really just how great this country is.
Right.
Whether we're Democrats or Republicans, we got a lot to be thankful for just being here in this country. And I'm going to challenge my family members. If we're being divisive, and both sides can take blame, what individually we're going to do to bring this country together in our own space and our own community? That's a great conversation.
This is why I love Scott. He's so great.
So
you all really need to work. Come on, are you guys auditioning for the Hallmark Channel?
Yes. Which, by the way, also will shut down everything. You just watch the Hallmark Channel, and you can also work on your Black Friday list.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? You sit down, you start mapping out these shopping strategy for the next morning or whatever.
Oh, yeah, I'm all over that.
People will want to know the deals and bargains, and they'll want to
know
the strategy.
Yeah, you can bargain and deal with family members, too. Like, if you don't start a fight tonight,
I'll get you that iPod.
You get this.
That's $19.95.
Ed, what would someone have to do to get you to miss part of Thanksgiving Day, to wait in line, to buy something at a store. This is the phenomenon that I can't believe happens.
No.
I would never wait for hours. It's
Hours?
insane.
It's dangerous.
And you see the video every year of people beating each other up just to be the first in line at Target or Walmart. What are you thinking, people?
They're getting their frustrations out.
No, but
That's what they're going to be doing.
They're there with their hibachi grills and they're grilling out. I'm like, wait, this is
Again-
Thanksgiving. He's like, well, this is my Thanksgiving dinner.
Right. Again, I do think you should wear pajamas if you're doing this in public. It's just kind of my rule for all things that are uncomfortable.
Okay,
Just
Shannon
bring
is
a
going to
PJ.
host her, so that you're going to
I am
host your
in
show
the pajamas.
in the
I mean,
onesie.
but it's got to have the feety. The feety is different than the ones that just cut off at the ankles.
Oh my
Feety
Okay,
goodness.
pajamas,
feeties,
right?
feties. Are you going in a
I've got
feeties?
different-
I'm not going to do
One
that.
I
looks
will
like a
never,
turkey.
ever wear an adult one. That's like that. What's that other hoodie thing that I don't know. What
You
that's
should ask
called,
people to send you pictures if they are
family
wearing.
Yes, tweet us your
family of
pictures.
onesies.
Tweet the pictures.
Tweet us your pictures of what you're wearing. Because
All right, let's go around and let's start with worst but funny, not worst sad, but like worst or most uncomfortable Thanksgiving or holiday moment involving a table or being around the table.
Oh, God.
All right, I'm going to start. So I'll let you think.
Okay, yeah.
Start. I already know.
Okay, I was 12 years old, and or maybe 12, maybe 11 or 10. And my brother Jimmy came home from college. He went to WPI in Massachusetts, came home from college, and I idolized my brother Jimmy. Idolized. I was the littlest idol. I missed him. I cried when he went to college. He comes home and he had his hair a little long. This is the 70s. His hair was a little long. He came home with like a macrame belt, you know, those like belts they used to have with the long tassels. And my mother, God rest her soul, we lived in a tiny little Rambler house. She looks at him and she says, "What? You're going to get your haircut?" I can still hear her voice. "You are going to get your haircut? What's happened?" And she the whole dinner picking up, like, but it was just the way she was. My brother got up from the table and walked from Glastonbury, Connecticut, all the way to the Hartford, Connecticut bus depot and took a bus back home, back to the college, sat there and ate like a hot dog out of a can for Thanksgiving. We laughed about it years later, my brother and I still laugh about it, but I was bereft
Devastated.
without my brother. Like, you ruined my, I was crying.
Yeah,
I'm like, but it's just the stupid
worst.
stuff that happens, like kids' parents, push the buttons. And
Well, and everybody fights, right? Families,
Everybody fights.
We try to act like, oh, and people think your family must be perfect. You never have an
No.
argument. No, we had great arguments. Now, my mom was from Cuba,
Yep.
and Thanksgiving was her favorite holiday. She loved this country, always wanted to make it the most perfect dinner, invited everybody over, all the aunts, sisters, my godfather Emilio. I just remember one where they got into a big political argument. Yes, we are a divided family. There are conservatives
Good.
and
Mine
liberals.
too.
Big argument. The argument just kept escalating. The turkey was in the oven, and the turkey was burned. It burned completely. The fighting went on for so long. I mean, Cubans can really go at it, and it does.
I would have liked that. That's my kind of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Cubans
like
go.
that.
Yeah, it burned. There was
Yeah,
no.
all right.
But you know what? In the end, I thought it was going to end badly. In the end, everybody was laughing. Everybody thought the turkey made them laugh. They cooked something else.
Do you remember what the argument was about?
You know,
don't remember. See, you don't even remember now.
I kind of remember. My uncle had come from Cuba. I don't want to get into. And there was a lot of arguments
All right.
back and forth about the political system.
All right, Scott, what
Turkey parts are really important in my family.
Yeah.
Me and my dad and brothers and cousins, we love the turkey necks and we like the turkey tails. Don't pass any judgment, right?
I like
so
it too.
So we cook extra ones, right? But if you get to the dinner table late, they're all gone.
Oh.
And I got there late one day after college or when I was coming home, and they were all gone, and there was no peace at the table. My dad's a retired judge. I'm a lawyer. I got a couple cousins that are lawyers.
You argued that out.
And I was ready to write a legal brief to all of them about how offensive they were to not leave me a turkey tail or a turkey butt.
Shannon.
I'm going to take it to Christmas because we'll
Okay.
soon be there. But my family, I remember, I had come home from college, and I remember we were invited to, my dad was really good friends with the man who was then Lieutenant Governor of Florida, and we were invited to the special Christmas or Christmas Eve dinner over at their house. So they're giving me a tour of the house, and I'm at the top of their staircase, and I look down, and the party's down there and getting ready for the dinner, and I somehow missed a step, and I start sliding down the staircase, and I'm grabbing onto the banister, which is woven with live garland, and I'm jamming my hands with pine needles the whole way down. The whole party stops, and everybody watches this girl like fall down the stairs. Then I get up, and it's silent, and I'm sort of like, I'm fine. Like my hands are bleeding, and the needles are falling out, and I'm like, like, this is gonna. I'm not embarrassed at all. And I was like 19 or 20. It was.
I know when you're that age, anything's embarrassing. All right, Ed, give us some. I mean, horror story is not an exaggeration,
I hear all these
but
wonderful stories, and what comes to mind is my grandparents were always determined to have one table, even though their dining room table couldn't come close to fitting everybody. And so by the time you got down to me when I was a kid, you were like 4 tables down. It was like a construction table that was missing a leg. And hence the name kiddie table. And I remember how hard I worked to want to get to the big table someday.
Any day now, Ed, you'll be there any day.
Someday. I'm still not there, you're right.
All right, guys. But this past midterm season, they seem to kick it up a notch. It makes this interview with Hollywood actor and director Rob Reiner I conducted last January all the more relevant today. He makes no secret about it that he's not a big fan of our commander-in-chief, you think? I sat down with him to find out why. Let's talk about what politics does to art, okay?
Okay.
Politics and art, they've always had a connection, obviously.
Yeah.
There's always been a connection. And the conservatives in Hollywood, the ones that will actually rear their heads, say that there's a blacklist in Hollywood, that if you express support for Trump, basically it's like what Harvey Weinstein did.
Yeah,
the people who went, they don't work.
I don't know that there's a blacklist, but I can tell you that the vast majority of artists, directors, writers, actors are liberal. There's no question about that. And there's a reason for that, because a liberal have a very big view of things. This is what I've said. I said this to Bill Clinton in the Oval Office. I said, the difference between Republicans and Democrats? Republicans know they're right. Democrats entertain the possibility that they might be wrong. And that's the big difference. And that's why you see liberals drawn to the arts, because it's more of an open-minded kind of thing. And I'm open-minded. Look, I came on your show.
I love it. This is what it should be about. I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, are you bothered, looking back in the 70s, obviously, I grew up watching, you as Michael Stivic, the liberal do-gooder on All in the Family.
Right.
Did it bug you that Archie Bunker was more beloved than your character? Because you are kind of your character. He was a liberal who ended up playing this kind of, this blue-collar, kind of irascible guy but he had a lovable side to him.
He did, and we got a lot of criticism because people were saying...
Loved him. They
were saying, how dare you make a lovable bigot?
Right.
And we always said, he's a human being.
But
he loves his wife, he loves his daughter, and that makes him human.
And you say Trump, you said he's a racist, you said
he is.
He absolutely is not. Do I look like a person who would hang around with someone who is racist? I don't hang around with him, but I've known him for 15 years. I will tell you this, and you have to believe me.
I'm going to listen.
You might think he's,
I just go by what he says.
You might disagree with his policies, that's fine. I have no problem with that. He's not a racist.
Then why did he spread this thing about Obama? Why did he spread this thing about Obama not being a citizen?
I disagree with that. There were a lot of people who did that.
That's a very racist thing.
He is not a racist. If you're a racist, I don't think Oprah Winfrey would have been friends with him for all those years. That's just ridiculous.
And why does he say that there's good on both sides when there's Nazis marching?
Sometimes he's not the most precise in his linguistics.
And why does he say S-hole countries?
Like Obama said, S-house or S-place, S-storm about Libya, or Lindsey Graham, is he a racist who talked about the hellhole of Mexico and Central America? I mean, again,
I'm just putting all of his things together. Central Park 5, not renting to black people. There's a thing there.
Anyway, so getting back to the character.
I think he's a racist.
Okay, but you don't know him. I don't say people are racist.
I don't know him that well. I've met him one time.
I know, and you thought he was a narcissist. Nobody in this town is narcissistic. When I read your comment about Trump, he's one of the biggest narcissists. I'm like, you hang out with the people who read other people's lines for a living.
You bet.
Okay,
and I can tell you.
And they look at themselves in the mirror all day. And I'm in television too, but come on. I mean, narcissism?
Okay, so let me tell you, I work with the biggest narcissists in the world.
Yeah.
Actors are the biggest narcissists in the world. They want attention. Yeah. They want to be loved.
Yeah.
They don't even come close to this guy in the one time I spend with him. I was with him with Billy Crystal, and it was his...
Another person I adore.
It was at his hotel for one of his fights.
Yeah.
They had a fight.
But narcissist.
And he basically only talked about himself the whole time.
Well, that's a show. I mean, Bill Clinton was a smooth operator, but he might be better at hiding his narcissistic tendencies. Clinton, Obama. I mean, Reagan actually was not narcissistic at all, and I used to work for him. Not narcissistic, but most of the, I mean, JFK.
Well, usually you get to that position, you need that. You need to be loved.
But
you need that much of
attention.
attention.
Do you have, like, so Archie, like, you kind of, like, people compare Trump to Archie Bunker. Okay, fine, whatever. But
Well,
Archie
they're both
was
from
lovable.
Queens.
They're both lovable. But you don't see anything redeeming at all in Donald Trump. Not one thing.
I don't see him. I don't see him be lovable. I'm not judging, Donald Trump by his.
You just don't like his policies. I mean, you don't like his policies.
No. That's not true. I don't like his policies. That is true.
The booming economy.
But I don't like the way he conducts his life, the way he treats other people.
But you just did a movie about LBJ who had horrible personal flaws.
I don't like a man who goes like this with towels, with paper towels. I don't like that. I don't like the way he treats other people.
Okay, so the paper towel throw. He's not, was he a big athlete?
No.
Was this in the Houston, the hurricane deal?
Wow, you're making some really bad arguments,
I don't
Laura.
think so.
You're smart as hell. You know better than to say when I make that comment, I'm talking about the way his behavior, the way in which he behaves towards other people. That's all. That's all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about anything else.
Okay, just before we let you go, your dad is such an amazing man and talent.
Well, I'm going to say you're great because you try to find the differences and the tension even when there shouldn't be. I think that's pretty admirable.
Well, I don't think it's a conversation, and I'm just. Yeah. And again, Rob Reiner is someone who actually should be lauded because he's someone who doesn't agree with probably a lot of what I think. That's fine. But he actually comes in for a conversation. Yeah. And I'll tell you, Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill, Rob, a lot of them won't come on this show because I actually read legislation.
Who doesn't come on?
Lindsey Graham, Jeff Flake, John McCain. Well, he's not feeling well. But, Cory Gardner, a lot of Republicans. They're afraid to answer questions about their job. And I find that to be disturbing. The fact that you're willing, and you've gone on with Tucker, I know, you went on with O'Reilly. And that is really admirable.
Have a conversation.
It's really good. Yeah. And more people should do that. And we do have a lot in common, believe it or not, because I love your craft and what you've done in Hollywood. We don't get into politics. Politics is about that much of life. But your dad is someone I also really, really admire. He's 95 years old.
Yeah, he's going to be 96 in 2 months.
About as old as my mother would have been.
He gets up every morning and he says, if I'm not in the obits, I eat breakfast.
I know. I just read the obits to make sure I'm not in them. Yeah. And what life lesson did you learn from him that you carry with you when you get up in the morning?
The biggest thing I got from him is the way in which he conducted his career, the way in which he treated other people, and the way in which he did his work. It wasn't like he sat me down and taught me. I just watched the way he behaved and how he handled his career. And it was like a regular guy, So that's what I got from him more than anything.
Hey, thanks for being here.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
Toll from the deadliest wildfire in California history rising again tonight. An 84th victim has been found. Another 563 people are still unaccounted for this evening in and around the city of Paradise. The city was largely incinerated by the fire that started 2 weeks ago. Heavy rain today is hampering search efforts. China's Vice Minister of Commerce taking the United States to task on Friday in Beijing. Wang Zhuwen saying trade talks between the U.S. and China should be mutually beneficial. China's Commerce Minister lashing out against a recent United States report showing Beijing has failed to change its unfair practices in intellectual property and technology transfer. The presidents of both countries are expected to talk in person at the upcoming G20 summit. I'm Matt Finn. Now back to the Ingraham Angle special.
Here's a little lesson for your turkey and stuffing conversations. Donald Trump is nearly 675 days into his presidency, and a new polling average from 538 reveals that he's just as popular as Ronald Reagan was at the exact same time in his presidency. But there's still a lot more he can learn from the great communicator. Earlier, I spoke with two experts, Bill Bennett, who served as the Secretary of Education under President Reagan, and I work for him, and Craig Shirley, the author of 4 bestsellers on the 40th president, including Reagan Rising. All right, Bill, I find this to be fascinating, that we now have all these liberals coming out and saying, well, the Trump folks, and on any given number of issues, gosh, if only they were more like Reagan. Well, how do you process this today?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny, isn't it? A rosy memory changing the way things were. I don't remember it being very pleasant back then, serving with Ronald Reagan, with the liberals, with the media. There is a line from Shakespeare, though, that says, he's good being gone. But one has to say, whatever criticisms came down during the Reagan era, and there were a lot of them, I got some, you derivatively got some, you were working for me, as you said. Ronald Reagan got plenty. It's nothing compared to what Donald Trump is getting. So if they can use Ronald Reagan to beat up Donald Trump, they will do it. And they can do it with a straight face. I don't know how they pull off the straight face.
Craig, you always remind us of this fact that the left will do anything to regain power, even invoking the political figure they thought was basically the enemy. I want to play some flashback sound from some of our favorites in the media. And I believe this was during the administration, right after the president, right after he passed away. Let's watch.
Did his vision include extraordinary deficits? Did his vision include cutting the budgets for education and back of the hand in terms of...
Are you saying morally history will not be kind to him?
I don't think history particularly will be kind. I don't think history has any reason to be kind to him.
I used to say, I thought if you were down on your luck and you got through the Secret Service, got in the Oval Office, and Mr. President, I'm down on my luck, he would literally give you the shirt off his back. And then he'd sit down in his undershirt and he'd sign legislation throwing your kids off school lunch program, maybe your parents off Social Security.
He wanted grandma to eat Alpo. Remember that, guys? Craig?
Yeah, right,
This is unbelievable.
Yeah, and ketchup was a vegetable, too. Look, this is a pattern that plays itself out actually many times, Laura. When Eisenhower was president, liberals derided him. They said Dwight Eisenhower couldn't read if his lips were chapped. Then he becomes a paragon of virtue. Barry Goldwater was attacked by psychiatrists and newspapers and denounced as crazy. Now he's held up by liberals as a paragon of virtue. The left hated Richard Nixon. I saw a liberal historian on MSNBC the other day actually favor Richard Nixon comparably to Donald Trump. Gerald Ford, both Bushes were all hated by the left until they were no longer in office. Then they become convenient tools to bash the current occupant of the White House. So it's nothing new, but it's especially infuriating with Reagan because they know nothing about the Reagan. As I said earlier to you this morning, Laura, I said they're in over their head. They don't know what they're talking about.
And we all worked for President Reagan, and we all know that on the issue, for instance, of immigration, a lot of Democrats are out there saying, well, the Republican Party, Donald Trump, they're getting, if only, again, they were more like Reagan on immigration. So let's play a few of the choice sound bites from President Reagan on immigration.
The simple truth is that we've lost control of our own borders, and no nation can do that and survive.
I've spoken of the shining city all my political life, but in my mind it was a tall, proud city built on rocks stronger than oceans, windswept, God-blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds living in harmony and peace. If there had to be city walls, the walls had doors, and the doors were open to anyone with the will and the heart to get here.
Bill, you can take a hit at that one. It's first of all, I get shivers every time I hear him speak. But talk about the city on the hill. The city had walls; it would have a door, and so the left takes that part of the city on the hill. Anyone can come. See, Ronald Reagan wanted everyone to come, but then of course they forget the part about the wall and the part about the country without borders isn't a country.
Yeah, once again, he's good being gone. It occurred to me while you were talking to Craig. Maybe 2, 3, 4 elections in the future, we will see videotape of Donald Trump saying, the liberals saying, now those were the days when people had heart and soul. I
don't think so.
Just a thought thought experiment here, Laura. Can it possibly can it be worse till it gets worse? But no, this
Bill
is amazing.
Might be
There's so
right.
much. But there's so much the two share in common. I mean, Craig was saying the other day, or maybe I read it in his book, this commitment to defense, to a defense buildup, which is so essential to both of them. The focus on a wall. Reagan wanted to tear one down, the right one, and Trump wants to build one up, and that's the right one too. But they're very different personalities, and yet very much going in the same direction. Seems to be the thing. I think I'd be interested in Craig's opinion on this, having served in the cabinet and proudly for Ronald Reagan. I think this is a more conservative cabinet than Ronald Reagan had. Don't you,
Craig?
Yeah, I think so. But it's also, don't forget, Bill, is that the bench, you were a great conservative in the cabinet, and William French Smith, and of course Ed Meese, but the bench was a lot thinner. This is a byproduct of the Reagan presidency, is that there's a lot more talent now to be available for the Trump administration that wasn't available in 1980.
Yeah, and think about that. Think of all the people that were waiting in the wings to get appointed to the appellate courts. I mean, all those 50-something-year-olds, late 40s, they were children of the Reagan era, were they not, Bill? I mean, it changed. I mean, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I mean, the left would probably love that if it weren't for Reagan. I mean, if it didn't work for you, I wouldn't be doing any of this.
No, the AAA and AA leagues very much highly populated then with the right people. I remember, Laura, at our place. Remember, we got known as Fort Reagan at one point. We had 134 political appointees. And I remember Senator Weicker, who was supposed to be a Republican, said, "What are you doing with all these political appointees?" And I said, I think we're doing it right. We won the election. And that was a great training camp. And it's interesting to see where a lot of those people have gone. Famous television personalities such as yourself.
Yeah, right. Well, Bill, they can
lawyers.
blame you. Coming up, the disappearing goal line. We spoke about patriotism and the clash between sports and politics, and why it's become so overwhelming today. This has been so wild for me to watch what's happened in football. I mean, I've always been a football fan my whole life. My mother was an Alabama fan. Sorry, Coach. She was a wild Alabama fan, which I inherited. No particular reason. She just liked Bear Bryant. And it was always imbued with a sense of patriotism and love of country. And we're now at a place where an invitation to the White House turns a Super Bowl champion, Coach, into, a puddle of goo. They're like debating for weeks how to handle it. What has happened in our country?
Well, first of all, I was fortunate enough to take a football team to the White House, and it was one of the great experiences for all our players. Now, once again, they weren't going to earn millions of dollars a year by playing professional football. But I think that we just get fouled up in what our priorities are. The one thing I always told our team, and I believe this so strongly, we'll not use our football team to promote anything except the University or the Philadelphia Eagles or the New York Jets, whatever the case may be. If you want to promote a cause and use your time and your money, that's fine. The locker room belongs to the players in the NFL. They can say anything they want in there. However, the football team on the field belongs to me. And we have to be focused on one thing. We're here to win the Super Bowl. Nothing else has mattered. I don't want any other distraction on this football team except one focus. I congratulate Coach Peterson on just doing a tremendous job. He lost a great quarterback, yet he still managed to win the Super Bowl, and I'm very proud that he was looking forward to getting to the White House, and it's unfortunate the players don't get that experience.
And his quarterback was actually one of the few people who wanted to come to the White House, along with Coach Peterson, who wanted to come as well, but they didn't make the trip. Another coach from the NBA, Coach Kerr from the Golden State Warriors, made this point, Coach, about patriotism and Trump. Let's watch.
The president is turning all this stuff into a political game and a ratings game, and it's a blatant display of nationalism. We just have these military sing-alongs at the White House to show how patriotic we are, even though we don't know the words. It's just incredible. It is incredible. But I'm really proud of people in this country who are recognizing what's happening, and instead of turning this into a political game.
He went on to say they're following their conscience. Basically, that's Steve Kerr, of course, the coach for the Warriors.
Well, first of all, where is he living? I think Golden State is out around San Francisco, and that's probably the view of most people. Laura, I'm an individual. I remember when my father went to the Pacific for almost 5 years. I never saw my father for 5 years, but fortunately he came back. Many children's father didn't come back because they paid the ultimate sacrifice. I've been to Afghanistan. Last June I was in Korea at the DMZ zone. Go into a hospital in Afghanistan and see people who have lost their legs, etc., and yet they still have a love of this country. When you talk about politics, then that is what's coming into this game. If you don't believe in something, and I think it comes back down saying that President Trump's a racist. I get tired of hearing a racist, homophobia, etc. For 70-some years, he did business. He was in the public limelight. There was never a claim one time about him being a racist. I was in Detroit yesterday with Ben Carson. We're trying to do some things for the disadvantaged youth under President Trump's leadership. They had a sign there that I thought was great. It said, talents equally distributed around the world, opportunities not. Let's work to give people an opportunity, particularly the young people. But there have been more cops shot this year than in the previous year. You just keep looking at it. It's absolutely insane because we aren't focused. We have a problem because we have different objectives. We might have a difference of opinion how to make America great, how to give people an opportunity, how to win a championship. Coach Kerr's done a tremendous job. He has some great athletes. He also won several championships when he was a player. Congratulations on that. But when you talk about a political statement, read Steve Kerr's comment. That says it all.
Well, I think what they're saying is the players are following their conscience about police brutality. It's not about the country. It's not about the flag. They're very patriotic people, but they are just, in their own way, protesting against police brutality, and they think Trump doesn't understand that, so they don't want to go spend time with Trump.
I think what President Trump said this morning is great. He said to all the players, you talk about Bruce brutality, you talk about police being unfair, bring it to me. Bring me the case. Bring me the people. I will look into it. That he can't do any more than that. But let's not use sports in order to promote a cause. We're there to win a championship. That's our only purpose.
I can tell you, Coach, I was at the White House when the Crimson Tide came, of course, national champions this year. They all came. Coach, I think made it clear everybody's coming. I'm sure players didn't like Trump there, but they came. They had a great time. It was a beautiful event. It was packed out. And to me, that's what it's all about. We put aside politics. It's about the country, and that's the People's House and celebrating national champions. Lou, it's so great to see you. Huge fan. And come back soon, would you? I will, but we got to go to Notre Dame to a game like you requested. Okay, we're doing that this fall. Okay, you and I are going to a game this fall. I'm embarrassed. I've never been to Notre Dame. I am completely embarrassed. So I am coming this fall with you. That is a date. Coach, thanks so much. Thank you. Coming up.